The sun was setting over downtown LA, painting the glass towers in shades of gold and amber that made the whole city look like it was on fire. He stood by the window of his penthouse office, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. Another problem to solve. Another loose end to tie up. That's all this was supposed to be, just business, nothing personal. He'd done this 1,000 times before. Walk in, handle it, walk out. Easy. But then she walked into the room. The moment the door opened, everything stopped. The noise from the street below faded. The weight of his gun against his ribs disappeared. Even his heartbeat seemed to pause, like his whole body was waiting for permission to keep going. Damn, what is that? It wasn't fear. He'd stopped feeling fear years ago, back when fear still meant something. This was different. This was like the ground shifting under his feet, like the air getting thicker, like every instinct he'd built over 2 decades suddenly glitching out. She didn't look at him the way most people did. No flinching, no sizing him up, no fake smile trying to hide the terror underneath. She just looked at him. Really looked. Like she could see past the tailored suit, past the reputation, past the blood on his hands that no amount of soap could ever wash off. And for the first time since he was a kid, back before his brother died, before the streets claimed him, before he became the monster everyone whispered about, he felt something he didn't have a name for. Not the kind you find in church or meditation or whatever people sell in those bougie wellness studios in Silver Lake. Real peace. The kind that makes you realize you've been at war your whole life and didn't even know it. Yo, you good? His right-hand man asked from the doorway, but he didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His throat was tight, his hands clenched in his pockets so hard his knuckles hurt. She was the judge's daughter. The one person in this whole city he was supposed to avoid. The one connection that could unravel everything he built. And in that exact moment, standing there in his own office with the California sunset bleeding through the windows, he knew he was screwed. Completely, utterly, dangerously screwed. So, if you're still here, you already know. Stories like this aren't just about shootings, the mafia, and blood on the asphalt. They're about the kind of thing nobody talks about, the moment when 2 lives collide and everything changes. So do this. Before continuing this journey with Marco and the judge's daughter, hit that subscribe because here we're going all the way. Here you feel the weight of choices, the pain of the past, and that kind of love you know shouldn't exist. But it does. And leave a like now, don't wait for the end. Click there and stick with me because the next chapter is going to hit you differently. It's going to move you. Nobody's born into this life by choice. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, yeah, I'm gonna be the guy everyone fears, the one parents warn their kids about, the name that makes cops look the other way because it's easier than fighting. You get pushed into it, cornered, left with no other option but to survive. For him, it started the night his brother died. Marcus, 22 years old, clean record, working 2 jobs to help their mom pay rent in that cramped apartment in Boyle Heights. Marcus was the good one, the one who believed the system worked, who thought if you just kept your head down and did the right thing, life would give you a fair shot. He was wrong. It was a routine traffic stop. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong skin color in the wrong neighborhood. The cops said Marcus reached for something. Said they felt threatened. Said it was justified. The case went to court. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories. And the judge, her father, signed off on the dismissal. No trial. No justice. Just a closed case and a family destroyed. The system didn't fail us, bro. It worked exactly how it was designed. That's when he understood. There was no justice for people like him. No protection. No second chances. If you wanted to survive in LA, you had to build your own empire, write your own rules, become powerful enough that nobody could touch you. So that's what he did. He started small. Running packages for the local crew, earning trust, learning the game. He was smart, strategic, ruthless when he needed to be but never sloppy. Within 5 years he'd taken over. Within 10 he controlled territories from East LA to Long Beach. He had cops on payroll, politicians in his pocket, connections that stretched from Tijuana to Vancouver. He built an empire on the ashes of his brother's grave. But empires don't come free. Every brick was paid for in blood, in deals he couldn't take back, in compromises that carved pieces out of his soul. The worst one happened 7 years ago, when a rival crew tried to move in on his territory. They were backed by the Sinaloa cartel. Serious players, the kind you don't say no to unless you've got a death wish. He was outgunned, outmanned, and out of options. So he made a deal. A partnership. He'd move their product through his distribution network, keep the cops off their trail, and in exchange they'd back off and let him run LA his way. It was supposed to be temporary. Just until he got strong enough to stand on his own. But temporary became permanent. And now, 7 years later, he was in so deep there was no clean way out. The cartel knew too much, had too much leverage. If he tried to walk away, they'd burn everything he built and kill everyone he cared about. If he stayed, he was trapped forever, dancing on strings he couldn't cut. That was his original sin. The crack in the foundation that could bring the whole thing down. And nobody could ever know about it. Not his crew. Not the feds who'd been chasing him for years. And definitely not her. Because if she found out, if the judge's daughter discovered that the man she was starting to care about was in bed with the same cartel her father had spent a decade trying to dismantle, it would destroy everything. The business, the reputation, the fragile, impossible thing growing between them. He built his whole life on control, on staying 3 steps ahead, on never letting anyone get close enough to hurt him. But now she was close, closer than anyone had been since Marcus died. And the secret he'd buried 7 years ago was starting to claw its way back to the surface. She wasn't naive. That's what he kept telling himself, trying to justify the lies, the half-truths, the careful way he steered every conversation away from the parts of his life that would make her run. But deep down he knew the truth. She was smarter than he gave her credit for. Sharper. More observant. It wasn't her eyes that found the evidence, it was her instinct. They'd been seeing each other for 3 months by then. Nothing official, nothing they'd put a label on, just stolen moments in between the chaos of their completely incompatible lives. Coffee in quiet corners of Silver Lake where nobody knew his face. Late night drives up the PCH with the windows down and the ocean roaring beside them. Conversations that lasted until sunrise, the kind where you forget to check your phone because the person in front of you is more interesting than anything else in the world. He'd let his guard down. Just a little. Just enough. And that's all it took. She came to his place one evening unannounced, something she'd never done before. He was in a meeting with his accountant, going over the legitimate businesses that fronted the operation. Restaurants, car washes, a few tech startups that looked clean on paper but moved money like water underground. When he saw her standing in his living room, his stomach dropped. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual, trying to read her face. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer right away. Just stood there holding her phone, her expression unreadable. Not angry, not scared, something worse. Disappointed. "I need you to be honest with me," she said quietly. "And I mean really honest. Not the version you think I want to hear." His mind raced through every possible scenario, every slip-up, every trail he might have left exposed. About what? She held up her phone. On the screen was a photo, a screenshot of an encrypted message thread. His handle. Timestamps from 2 weeks ago. Transaction codes he recognized immediately. His blood went cold. "Where did you get that? Does it matter?" Her voice was steady, but he could hear the tremor underneath. "I'm not stupid. I know you're not just some businessman with a bad reputation. I've known that from the start. But this," she gestured at the phone. "This is different. These aren't just street-level operations. These are cartel connections. The same people my father has been trying to bring down for 10 years. You wanted to lie." Every instinct screamed at him to deny it, to spin some story, to protect the secret he'd killed to keep buried. But looking at her, at the way her eyes held his, demanding the truth, deserving the truth, he couldn't do it. "It's complicated," he started, but she cut him off. "No, don't do that. Don't insult me with, 'It's complicated.' Either you're working with them or you're not." He exhaled hard, running a hand over his face. For a long moment he just stood there, caught between the life he built and the person he wanted to become. "Yeah," he finally said. "Yeah, I am. Have been for 7 years." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. She didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. Didn't storm out. She just looked at him with this expression that was somehow worse than anger, like she was watching someone drown and couldn't reach them in time. "Why?" she asked, and her voice cracked just a little. "You're smart enough to know what this means. You could have built something legitimate. You could have walked away. You think I didn't try?" The words came out harsher than he intended. "You think I wanted this? I was backed into a corner. They were gonna wipe out everyone I cared about. My crew, my family, everyone. I made a deal to save lives and now I'm stuck in it. You don't just walk away from the cartel. That's not how this works. So you stay." She shook her head slowly. "You just keep doing it? Keep helping them move drugs, weapons, whatever else because you're too deep to get out? What choice do I have?" "You always have a choice." Her voice was firmer now, but the sadness was still there, heavy and suffocating. "You think you're protecting people, but you're just trapped. Just like your brother was trapped in a system that killed him. You became exactly what you were fighting against. That hit him like a bullet. He'd spent 15 years telling himself he was different. That he wasn't like the corrupt cops or the politicians or the judges who looked the other way. That he was building something to protect his people, to give them a chance the system never would. But she was right. Somewhere along the way he'd become the very thing he hated. Another cog in a machine that chewed people up and spit them out. Another person making deals with devils, justifying it as survival. You don't get it, he said, his voice low and raw. People die if I talk. If I turn on them, if I expose what I know, they'll come after everyone. My crew, my family, hell, probably you too, just for standing here right now. You think I want that blood on my hands? She stepped closer, and for a moment he thought she might reach for him, might offer some kind of forgiveness or understanding. But she didn't. You're already covered in blood, she said softly. You just don't want to see it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. He'd faced down rivals, survived FBI raids, stared down the barrel of more guns than he could count. But nothing had ever made him feel as exposed, as raw as this moment right here. Because the person he loved, the one person who'd ever seen past the armor, was looking at him like he was already lost. And maybe he was. I can't lose you, he said, and his voice came out broken. But I can't walk away from this either. Not without getting everyone killed. She looked at him for a long time, her eyes searching his face like she was trying to memorize it, trying to hold on to the version of him she thought existed. Then you've already lost me, she whispered. Because the man I thought you were wouldn't let fear control him like this. He'd find a way out. He'd fight. And with that, she turned and walked toward the door. He stood there frozen, every part of him screaming to go after her, to say something, to fix this somehow. But his feet wouldn't move. Because deep down he knew she was right. He wasn't trapped because of the cartel. He was trapped because he'd chosen this life over and over again, and now he didn't know how to choose anything else. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. And for the first time in 15 years, since the night his brother died, he felt like crying. You know what hits hardest? It's not the guns, the money, the violence. It's that moment when someone looks at you and sees the truth you've been running from your whole damn life. Because no cartel, no gang, no empire breaks you as fast as one person who actually cares. And listen, if you've ever been in a situation like that, where love pulled you one way and loyalty dragged you the other, drop it in the comments. Tell me what part of this story hit you the most. Was it the lie he tried to protect? Was it the moment she saw right through him? Or was it that line, you're already covered in blood, you just don't want to see it? Your voice matters here. The way you feel about this is what keeps stories like this alive. So talk to me in the comments. I'm reading every single one. The next 2 weeks were hell. Not the kind of hell he was used to, shootouts, close calls, feds breathing down his neck. That was manageable. That was business. This was different. This was the kind of hell that lived in your chest, that woke you up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, that made everything taste like ash. He tried to focus on work. There were shipments to coordinate, territory disputes to handle, meetings with people who expected him to be the same cold, calculating bastard he'd always been. But every time he sat down to deal with business, all he could see was her face. The disappointment. The sadness. The way she'd looked at him like he was already a ghost. His right-hand man noticed. Yo boss, you good? You've been off lately. Like real off. I'm fine, he lied, staring at his phone for the 100th time that day, fighting the urge to call her, knowing it wouldn't change anything. You sure? 'Cause word on the street is the judge's people are asking questions. Poking around our operations. And you're sitting here zoned out like... I said I'm fine. His tone left no room for argument. But he wasn't fine. Not even close. Because she put a mirror in front of him, and for the first time in years, he'd actually looked. Really looked. And he didn't like what he saw. He told himself he was protecting people. Building something. Creating opportunities for kids from neighborhoods like the one he grew up in, giving them options the system never would. But that was the story he sold himself to sleep at night. The reality was messier, darker, covered in the kind of compromises that changed you from the inside out. How many people had gotten hurt because of decisions he made? How many families torn apart by the product moving through his network? How many kids growing up without fathers because of wars he'd started or deals he'd brokered? He'd always justified it. Always found a way to make it someone else's fault. The system, the circumstances, the world that gave him no choice. But she'd called him on it. And now he couldn't unhear it. You're already covered in blood. You just don't want to see it. The words haunted him. 3 days after she left, the cartel reached out. They wanted a meeting. New terms, they said. Expansion opportunities. The kind of offer that came with a smile and a gun under the table. He sat across from their representatives in a warehouse in Vernon, two men in expensive suits who spoke perfect English and carried themselves like they'd never worried about anything in their lives because they had the kind of power that made worry irrelevant. Business is good, no? One of them said, sipping whiskey like they were at a country club. Your distribution network is impressive. Efficient. Plain. We want to expand. Push into new markets. Vegas, Phoenix, maybe even up to Seattle. Translation, we own you and now we want more. I'll need to think about it, he said carefully. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course, take your time. But not too much time. Opportunities like this don't wait forever, you know? Translation, say yes or we'll remind you what happens when people say no. He left that meeting feeling like the walls were closing in. The cartel wanted more. The feds were circling closer. His guy on the inside said they were building a RICO case, just needed one more piece to make it stick. And her father, the judge, was apparently launching some new task force focused specifically on cartel operations in Southern California. Everything was collapsing. Slowly. Inevitably. And the only person who'd ever made him feel like there was a way out was gone. That night he drove out to the coast. Parked at an overlook near Malibu where you could see the whole city spread out below, millions of lights flickering in the darkness like stars that fell to earth and forgot how to rise. He'd built an empire in that city. Carved his name into its underground so deep it would take decades to erase. He had money, power, respect. Everything he'd fought for after Marcus died. But sitting there alone in his car, watching the waves crash against the rocks below, he realized something that should have been obvious years ago. He had everything except the one thing that actually mattered. His phone buzzed. A message from one of his lieutenants. Another problem that needed solving. Another fire to put out. The life he'd built, demanding attention, demanding sacrifice, demanding everything. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he thought about what she'd said. You always have a choice. Did he though? Could he really walk away from this? After everything he'd done, everyone who depended on him, all the blood spilled to build this empire, could he just stop? The answer terrified him. Because deep down he knew the truth, it wasn't the cartel holding him hostage. It wasn't fear of retaliation or worry about his crew or concern for his family's safety. It was him. He was the cage. He was the prison. He'd built these walls himself, brick by brick, deal by deal, compromise by compromise. And now he was so deep inside them he couldn't remember what freedom felt like. Keep it low-key, or this whole city gonna burn. That's what he'd told himself for years. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. Don't make waves. Survive at any cost. But what was he surviving for? More money he didn't need? More power that left him emptier every day? More nights alone in penthouses that felt like mausoleums, surrounded by people who feared him but didn't know him? His whole life he'd used fear as a weapon. Fear kept people in line. Fear protected him from getting hurt. Fear was safe, predictable, controllable. But now, for the first time since Marcus died, he was afraid of something he couldn't control. He was afraid of losing something real. Something that actually mattered. Something that made all the money and power and respect feel like the hollow bullshit it actually was. He'd spent 15 years building walls so high that nobody could reach him. And the one person who'd somehow climbed over them, who'd seen the human being buried under the legend, he'd pushed her away because facing the truth about himself was scarier than any gun, any rival, any threat the cartel could ever make. The Mafia demanded loyalty. The life demanded silence. LA demanded respect paid in blood and fear. But love? Love demanded something he didn't know if he could give anymore. Vulnerability. Truth. The courage to choose differently even when every instinct screamed at you to stay safe, stay hidden, stay in control. He sat there until sunrise, watching the city wake up, watching regular people start their regular days, going to work, taking kids to school, living lives that weren't drenched in secrets and violence and the constant weight of watching your back. He'd spent so long thinking he was above them, that he'd transcended the limitations of normal life, that he'd built something more important. But they had something he'd never have unless he changed. They had the freedom to love without fear. To build something real. To sleep at night without nightmares of betrayal and blood. And he wanted that. God, he wanted that so badly it physically hurt. But wanting it and being willing to pay the price for it were two completely different things. The sun climbed higher. His phone kept buzzing. The empire kept demanding. The life kept pulling. And he sat there paralyzed, caught between the man he'd become and the man he desperately wanted to be, knowing that choosing one meant destroying the other. No middle ground. No compromise. No safe play. Just a choice. The kind of choice that would define everything that came after. He didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the one after that. Instead he made calls. Quiet ones. The kind you don't make on regular phones with people who understand that some conversations never happened. He reached out to his oldest lieutenant, the guy who'd been with him since the beginning, who knew where all the bodies were buried because he'd helped dig half the graves. They met in a parking garage downtown at 2 a.m., away from cameras, away from ears. "I need you to be straight with me," he said. "If I wanted out, really out, what would it take?" His lieutenant looked at him like he'd just spoken another language. "Out? Boss, there is no out. You know that. The cartel doesn't do retirement packages." "I know what they do. I'm asking what it would take." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. "You'd need leverage," his lieutenant finally said. "Something big enough that they can't touch you without destroying themselves. And even then, man, even then it's a long shot. These dudes don't forgive. They don't forget. So I need insurance. You need a goddamn miracle." But he wasn't looking for miracles. He was looking for options. And over the next week he started building them. He reached out to his contact in the FBI, the agent who'd been trying to flip him for 3 years, who'd always said the offer was on the table if he ever wanted to talk. He didn't commit to anything, just felt out the possibilities, tested the waters. He dug through 7 years of encrypted files, pulling together every transaction, every communication, every piece of evidence that tied the cartel to operations across the western United States. The kind of information that could take down entire networks if it landed in the right hands. It was dangerous. Just having it made him a target. But it was also power. The kind of power that might buy him a way out. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing. Not his crew, not his family. This had to be quiet, invisible, a move nobody saw coming until it was already done. But there was one person he needed to tell. He found her at a coffee shop in Pasadena, the kind of place with books on the walls and local art and college kids studying for exams. She was sitting by the window with a laptop, looking tired but focused, and when she saw him walk in, her whole body tensed. He didn't blame her. "Can we talk?" he asked, keeping his distance, giving her space to say no. She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes, between the part of her that wanted to tell him to leave and the part that still cared, despite everything. 5 minutes, she finally said. He sat down across from her, suddenly aware of how different they looked in this space. Her with her coffee and laptop, looking like she belonged in the daylight. Him in all black, still carrying the weight of the night, looking like exactly what he was. A man from a world that didn't mix with places like this. "I'm gonna make this right," he said quietly. "I don't know if it'll work and it'll probably get me killed, but I'm gonna try." She closed her laptop slowly. "What are you talking about?" "The cartel. The deals. All of it. I'm getting out. You can't just." "I know I can't just walk away. But I've got something they want to stay buried. Information. Evidence. Enough to bring down their whole operation in California. I'm putting together a deal with the feds. Witness protection, immunity, the whole thing. It's gonna blow up everything I built, but..." He met her eyes. "But you were right. I've been trapped. And I'm done being trapped." She didn't respond immediately. Just studied his face like she was trying to figure out if this was real or just another story, another angle. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why now?" "Because I met someone who made me remember what I was fighting for in the first place. Before it all got twisted. Before I became the thing I hated." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "My brother died because the system failed him. And I built an empire trying to protect people from that same system. But somewhere along the way I became part of the problem. I became someone Marcus would be ashamed of." Her expression softened just a little. "I can't undo what I've done," he continued. "Can't bring back the people who got hurt because of my choices. But maybe I can stop it from getting worse. Maybe I can actually do something right for once." "The feds won't give you a deal without something major," she said. "And the cartel, they'll come after you. After everyone you care about." "I know. That's why I need to move fast. And that's why I need you to stay away from me until it's done. Your father's task force, they can't know about this yet. If word gets out before I make the deal, I'm dead. We're all dead." She shook her head slowly. "This is insane. You're talking about dismantling your entire organization, going against the cartel, cooperating with federal prosecutors? Do you understand how many ways this could go wrong?" "Yeah. But I also understand that if I don't do this, I'm already dead. Just the walking around kind." He reached across the table, not to touch her, just to close some of the distance. You asked me once if that scar was from someone I loved. It was my brother. He died believing in a system that didn't give a damn about him. And I've spent 15 years trying to build something outside that system, something that mattered. But I built it on the same foundations that killed him. Fear, violence, control. So what are you building it on now? She asked quietly. Hope, I guess. That it's not too late. That I can still choose different. That maybe... He paused, the words harder to say than he expected. That maybe there's still a version of me worth saving. The coffee shop hummed with normal life around them. Students laughing. The espresso machine hissing. Someone's phone ringing. The world kept turning, indifferent to the conversation happening in this corner booth, a conversation that would either save him or destroy him. She was quiet for a long time and he didn't push. Just let her think, let her process, let her decide if she could believe him one more time. If you do this, she finally said, you lose everything. Your crew, your territory, your reputation. The life you built, it's gone. And there's no guarantee the feds will protect you. No guarantee you'll survive long enough to testify. I know. So why risk it? He looked at her, really looked the way she'd looked at him that first day in his office when everything changed. Because for the first time in 15 years, I got something worth living for that isn't just survival. And I'd rather die trying to be the man you saw in me than live as the monster I became. The truth of it sat between them, raw and vulnerable and terrifying. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Then don't die, she said firmly. Whatever you have to do, survive it. Build the case, make the deal, blow up the whole damn thing if that's what it takes. But survive. He nodded, his throat tight, not trusting himself to speak. Because he'd never knelt for anyone. Never bowed. Never admitted weakness or fear or the possibility that he couldn't handle something. But right here, in a coffee shop in Pasadena with sunlight streaming through the windows, he knelt internally to the only force that had ever broken through his armor. Not fear. Not power. Not revenge or justice or any of the things that had driven him for years. Well, the kind that made you want to be better. The kind that demanded you face the truth about yourself and choose differently. The kind that was scarier than any gun because it required you to be vulnerable, to admit you were wrong, to risk everything for the chance at something real. 3 weeks later, he walked into a federal building in downtown LA with a lawyer, a flash drive full of evidence, and a target on his back the size of California. He gave them everything. Names, dates, transactions, routes. The whole structure of the cartel's Western operations, detailed enough to build cases that would take years to prosecute. In exchange, he got immunity, witness protection, and a chance at a life that didn't end with a bullet or a cell. But before any of that could happen, before the arrests or the trials or the reshaping of the criminal landscape in Southern California, there was one moment that mattered more than all the rest. He stood in that federal building, surrounded by agents and lawyers and people who saw him as either a threat or an asset, and he thought about his brother. About the kid who believed in doing the right thing even when the system was rigged. About the promise he'd made at Marcus's grave, to protect people, to build something that mattered. He'd kept that promise in the worst possible way. Built an empire on violence and fear and compromises that hollowed him out from the inside. But maybe it wasn't too late to keep it the right way. The lead agent looked at him across the conference table. This is your last chance to back out. Once you sign this agreement, there's no going back. Your old life is over. He picked up the pen. And for the first time since he was a scared kid watching his brother's casket lowered into the ground, he chose hope over fear. He signed. The city didn't burn. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. It just shifted. Quietly. Inevitably. The way things do when someone finally stops running from the truth and turns to face it head-on. Later, much later, after the arrests and the headlines and the long, complicated process of becoming someone new, she found him on a beach in Northern California. A small town nobody had heard of, where he worked construction and kept his head down and tried to figure out who he was without the armor. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat down next to him on the sand, watching the waves roll in under a gray sky that felt nothing like LA. You look different, she finally said. Feel different, he admitted. Still figuring out what that means. Any regrets? He thought about it. About everything he'd lost. The power, the respect, the life he'd built. The people who'd depended on him. The identity he'd carried for so long it felt like the only one he had. Yeah, he said honestly. But not about this. Not about choosing this. This meant her. Meant a chance. Meant waking up without the weight of secrets that could destroy you. meant building something real instead of something impressive. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something he'd thought was gone forever. Not the temporary kind you find in victory or power or control. The real kind. The kind that comes from knowing you looked at the worst parts of yourself and chose to change anyway. "So what now?" she asked. He smiled, a real smile, not the cold, calculated thing he'd worn like armor for years. "Now, I guess we figure it out. One day at a time. No big plans. No empire. Just life." She nodded against his shoulder. "I can work with that." And sitting there on that beach, in a town nobody knew his name in, watching the Pacific stretch out forever under a cloudy sky, he realized something profound. The chef de Mafia, the legend, the man who'd controlled half of LA's underworld, he was gone. Dead. Left behind in a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows and blood on the walls you couldn't see but could never wash away. And in his place was just him. Flawed. Scared. Trying. Human. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined all those years ago when he swore over his brother's grave to build something that mattered. But maybe it was the only ending that ever actually mattered at all. Because in the end, the chef de Mafia learned what his brother had known all along, what 15 years of power and violence and control couldn't teach him, what only love could finally break through the walls to reveal. It wasn't the enemies that broke him. It was the love he tried to deny. And only by surrendering to it, really surrendering completely without armor or angles or backup plans, could he finally become free.